talk to State Trooper about mail stuff there.
Thank you for joining West Valley City Police Chief Lee Russo for his monthly community meeting. This meeting takes place the second Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. at West Valley City Hall. The meeting is also broadcast via Facebook Live. Please join the discussion by commenting with your questions. Chief Russo will address comments and questions from our live viewers throughout the presentation.
Okay, good evening. Welcome. Beautiful August evening. The winds are up to about 35 miles an hour. The clouds have come, the lightning's striking, and I'm glad you all can take some time out and be here with us to talk about what's going on in the city. Just a reminder for those that are here, we stream this through our Facebook page. We'll be taking questions through Facebook as we move along. But what we're going to talk about tonight is crime, what's going on in the city, some things that people can do to protect themselves and their property. And then when we get through that, what we're going to do is basically open it back up for questions. So if there are questions, please feel free, raise your hand, we'll get them dealt with. The interesting thing about questions is I don't get the chance to prepare for them. So I do a lot of dancing up here sometimes, especially on those real tough ones. But as we begin, I was reminded the last two meetings I forgot to do something, and that was to say hello to my kids. Yeah, I know. I try to say hi to them, and then when I don't, I can't believe how many people here come up to me and say, "You forgot to say hi to your kids." So with that, to Nathan and Audrey, say hello to Catherine and her new husband. That's a long story. If we got time, I'll tell you about that. Andrew. And then finally to my son, Michael and Joey. Just want to say hello to them. They're all across the country, so this is their one chance when they get to see Dad in action a little bit, other than this past weekend at the wedding for my daughter. So, yeah, it didn't go well for me. I wasn't ready to let go. So, but that's the best and worst day for a father, I guess. But let's get started with what's going on here. West Valley, you all don't really care about what's going on in my personal life. Let's talk about residential burglaries. Up on the top of the screen, as you can see, we would expect in the 30-day cycle somewhere between 38 and 65 cases. And as you can see here, we have reported 50. So we're right in the middle of that. We're in our normal range. Now, to say that's normal, that's not really exciting because that means there are crimes still happening. So there is work to be done, and that's the important piece for you. Down on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, those rising bars are the hours of the day. And you can see as we move across the day, it starts at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it moves right to 11 o'clock at night. You can see in that noontime, 1 o'clock, so right around that top of the day, is when the greatest likelihood for residential burglaries has occurred. And if we talk about those, are there trends going on? We'll talk about that in a minute, and I'll highlight one or two cases I think were interesting. On the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you can see those are the days of the week. It starts with Sunday, moves Monday to Saturday. As you can see there, Mondays, especially Thursdays, Fridays, seem to be the most active time frame in these last 30 days. This is what our 30 days of activity looks like. As we look at the screen, you can see almost right in the center of the city, just above 3,500, and right around Bangor Highway. Just west of that, there's a spat of activity that we've seen in the apartment complex there with some break-ins. But what I'm going to do now is move you over to 2 weeks, which is the most recent time period. And you can still see that area at 3,500 in the middle of the screen, that horizontal line, where that yellow blob is up there. We've had 2 cases. So in the last 2 weeks, 2 burglaries. We know that area is active. Now, as we look at our burglaries, One's really interesting. Again, I want to refer to that 3500 South line. And if you come all the way to the left, so to the west, on that 3500 South line, you can see an event that was reported where somebody was trying to break into a home at night. And what it turns out to be is they were aroused by some people who were in the back of the home. They saw this suspect as he was at the window of this home. This is the interesting part. The suspect starts to run away. One of the people that sees him starts chasing him down, has a rope in his hand. He lassos him. I'm not lying, he lassos him. Takes him down like a bucking bronc. Calls the police, and here we come. Not only do we get the dumb ones, we get the slow ones. Now, okay, let's stop fooling around. If we go down to the right-hand side of the screen, the lower piece there at the bottom of Redwood Road, we've had a couple burglaries. One of those we have suspects on. It was a former roommate. Another one, they forced open a window, reached inside, got access. Once inside, took some electronic equipment, the entertainment system, TV. The point that I want to remind people of is it's hot now in August, and a lot of people leave those windows open. And that's an invitation for a criminal. They can jimmy the screen open, reach through, and get access into the house. So as the reminder, how do you prevent that? Well, you can get locks. And you can put those locks either in the tracks for the windows, and they'll only let the window open up so far or slide so far. Or you can even, in some cases with the older homes that have the wooden sills around them, I've seen where people have drilled small holes through the inside sash and into the exterior sash and put a nail in it. So you lift it up, 4 inches, and that's where you lock it, or you put a pin into it. And that prevents somebody from getting inside. Still gives you a bit of air moving through the house. Take a look at business burglaries. We would expect somewhere between 11 and 18. We've had 22. If we look at the time of day, bottom left, 5 o'clock in the morning, they're mostly being reported. So we know that these are happening overnight. In the early morning hours, when people are coming to work, they're reporting the burglaries. The day of the week, Sunday, tends to be the busiest time frame for us. So Saturday night into Sunday. Looking at the last 30 days, you can see the activity. You can see the red spots moving through the city, coming down along that Bangerter corridor, up along the Redwood Road area, and then up on the top end of 5600 West around Parkway. If we look at the last 2 weeks, this is what's going on. Not a lot of activity up there. But if we look over on the right-hand side of the screen, right there just above 3500, what's there? We know a business because it's a business burglary. Come on, do you know your neighborhood? Nobody wants to admit it. It's the Blue Boutique. Oh, now you see everybody's covering their mouths. Oh, no. Well, we had a burglary at the Blue Boutique. Have video. Why are you laughing? This is serious stuff. Forces through the front door, gets inside, he's on video, walks around. I don't know if he's shopping, just embarrassed to be there during the day when they're open. And he leaves. Doesn't take anything. It's got me thinking. Either one, he forgot it was his anniversary or his wife's birthday. Or, yeah, they didn't have anything that fit him. But you all have dirty minds. You really do. I'm being serious up here. But, okay, let's move on to the next one. Up above the Blue Boutique, we had another business broken into. A vehicle was stolen in that case. And then we come over to that line of cases along Bangor Highway, where you see that activity going. We had a burglary at the Family Services Center. Somebody smashed through the window, went inside. We had a business burglary at one of our storage facilities, the U-Rent facilities. And we don't see really any direct tie. So even though they're close to one another and along that corridor, we don't believe these cases are related. And then a couple other things that we've had here have been beauty salons or barber shops. Beauty supply place was broken into down along the bottom of the city on 4700. A barber shop was broken into. They removed a lot of clippers and hair supply products. So that was a bit unusual. Vehicle burglaries. We would expect somewhere between 86 and 103. We're at 103. Time of day, about 11 o'clock at night, it really starts to pick up. Goes through the nighttime hours. And as you can see, day of week, Sunday is the most active day, so Sunday or Saturday night into Sunday morning. The majority of cases that we're looking at are strictly people who leave the doors unlocked on their cars. And we talk about this just about every month. Please lock those doors. Leave those windows rolled up. And then before you walk away from your vehicle, scan it. Make sure that there's nothing of value that's sitting out that you think somebody walking down the street is going to want to take. Try and park your car in a well-lit area. If there's a street light, under that street light, in your driveway, leave the lights on to your, in front of your carports, your drives. Get some light around that car. Lighting is one of the most effective deterrents to crime, not only for vehicle burglaries, but even for residential burglaries, because criminals do not want to be seen. They'll try to avoid those lit areas. So again, you can maximize security by putting those lights on at your home and keeping that driveway, those post lamps and such, lit at night. So let's take a look at the map. If you look at the last 30 days, you can see right below 3100 South, over probably right around 44 West. We've had a spat of activity there. Now, in our investigation, one of the things that we learned was there was a party in that neighborhood close by. And there were a number of juveniles that were seen roaming through the neighborhood on this specific night. 4 of the cases were reported to us on the same night. And then what happened was a day or two later, we started getting some trickling calls in from people who we believe didn't discover their vehicle was broken into. And then when they returned to their vehicle, they found out, yes, it was broken into, called us. So we believe all that occurred pretty much on one night. We look in the last 2 weeks, you can see within that last 2 week time frame, that hot spot that we're talking about up there off of 31 South is still there. And that's why we suspect it was on that same night or very close to it, because it's captured in these last 2 weeks. Vehicle thefts. We would typically expect between 63 and 83. 55. We've had 55 stolen. A couple things we're going to talk about, and I'll talk about them later in the presentation. We've been very focused on trying to detect auto thieves and interdict this kind of activity. And we just worked a countywide detail with a number of the local police agencies over last week, 3 days in last week, and we had a lot of success in identifying and arresting auto thieves and other criminals. So, as I said, I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. If we look at the 30 days, right up against Bangerter, just north of 3,500 in the Rockway, the apartments complexes, right there across from where the hospital is. Back in that apartment community, we've had several vehicle thefts that have occurred. And if we look at the last 2 weeks, you'll see that area is still active. And we've been focusing a lot of attention toward that. The other thing I'll kind of point out to you is if you look down in the southeast corner of the city, down on the end of, or the bottom of Redwood Road, 3800 down to 4100, you can see that we have another spat of activity. Well, the one thing that's kind of unique there is we don't think that that's related, but typically that's where we experience a lot of our auto thefts and vehicle burglaries because the apartment complex is there. And we've been spending a lot of time down on Redwood Road with a lot of visible presence from marked police officers, undercover officers, and what we're seeing there is the concentration of activities breaking up and starting to move away from those apartment complexes. So we know we're being effective around those apartment complexes, and we're working with some of the management companies about security on their lots. And we think we're having a positive effect there. Vehicle recoveries, we would expect between 94 and 121. We've had 88. Most of our recoveries in the beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If we take a look at the 30-day pattern, you can see where they're being recovered. You know, kind of in the same areas where some of them are being stolen, along 2700 West and 35 South, out on Redwood Road, and then down around where the hospital is, around that apartment community. We've picked up some. Looking at the last 2 weeks, not a lot of activity there. And now if we look at both thefts, which are the dark dots, and recoveries, which are the yellow dots, you can kind of see what's going on there. You know, how often what we're finding the pattern is you'll see a dark dot and you'll see a yellow dot typically real close to one another. Tells us somebody in that neighborhood's probably stolen the car, driven away, dropped the stolen car off, stole another car, and now has driven it back. And that's why you get those two cases near each other. Helps us focus in. Your suspect lives fairly close by. Robberies. We expect 13 to 20. We've had 14. These cases, the majority of them have been at night. Most of these are street robberies, so they're physical force. Take a look at a couple of these cases I wanted to highlight. Out of those original cases I told you about that we had, that number of 14 cases, the majority of them were actually shopliftings that became physical, meaning that somebody was shoplifting. As they were leaving, they were security or a employee tried to stop them, and there was a physical altercation, a pushing or whatever, a threat, and then it turns into a robbery. Let's take a look at the map. As you can see, this is us looking across the entire city. You don't see a big cluster of activity. We see a couple little hot spots just because the numbers are so few that when you have one or two close together, you're going to see that hot spot appear. Now, if we look at this in the last 2 weeks, on the west side of the city, 3,500, just past or just west of 5,600 West, Dairy Queen. 2 people were seen going behind the Dairy Queen business, and then one seen running away, and it turns out that the other person was there, got assaulted, was hit in the head, took the wallet, took the cell phone, person ran off. People came to his aid quickly. Police were notified quickly. Suspect was leaving on a bike. Officers get into the area, find the suspect. Suspect's in custody. Then if we look on 3500 to the right of where that Dairy Queen is on 3500, that horizontal line in the middle of the screen, Family Dollar Store. Had a Polynesian male, large framed, go into the store, produce a knife, and commit a robbery. Interestingly enough, we have had this year, in different occasions, that same dollar store hit by somebody with a knife. We have identified that suspect previously, so we don't know, this case, if it's related in some way, shape, or form, but it just seems unusual. That store, again, same method of operation with a knife. So we're continuing to look at that one. Then we have another one on the far east of the city on 3500, right near the city line. This one happened to be a drug transaction that went bad. Person was in the area. Two suspects that they knew came up, knew that this person was holding, assaulted him, took the drugs, and left. So we're investigating that one. Traffic accidents in the last 30 days. 358 total accidents in 30 days. Y'all can't drive here. You thought the Blue Boutique was funny. I say that one and you're all just looking at me like, uh-huh, okay. What are you trying to say?
They're out-of-staters.
They're out-of-staters? Just people passing through. It's that tourism. But as you can see, as we have with every month, it's the same areas that we're focusing on. It's 3500 South from about Bangor east to Redwood Road, and then our 5600 West Corridor from about Parkway, just south of 3500 South. This is the part that everybody loves. Traffic citations in the last 2 weeks. It's blank. What's that mean? That means somebody up at VEC unplugged our server. So our tickets didn't geocode, so we couldn't plot them. But guess what? We can still. This was me being cute. I had a little free time today. Okay, yeah, I know, showing my age. All right, let's get serious. Citations. As you can see, we have been out there. And you can see we've been writing tickets. Our focus is on these accident areas and crime areas. But as you can see, 77 license violations, 526 moving violations, 63 non-moving violations, 102 registrations, and 48 warnings. So we've been out there, we've been active, we are making stops in dealing with these problems. What our direction to our officers has been is focus on those problematic areas. Look for the violations that contribute to accidents and take action. On this slide, if you look, once again, because we're unable to plot the actual locations on the map with the citations, what these rings signify, that's where the concentration of our activities have been. If you can see, the pink area is where we've been writing our traffic, or making our traffic stops. The green area, I'm going to make sure I get it right. The green area is where our accidents have been happening. The blue area, that big square in the center, that was the targeted area where we've been having those auto thefts and recoveries, vehicle burglaries. That's what that encompasses. And the reason we have these rings out there is because we want those rings to overline or overlap where our problems are, along with where our accidents are and where our crime is occurring. So when you look at that, you can say, well, I don't see many rings sitting around that big square. But if you look at where we're writing those citations along Redwood Road and 3500 South, that's where the accidents have been happening. We've been making a lot of stops. We've been dealing with the new regulations pertaining to roadside solicitors. So we're making a lot of contacts in these areas, dealing with a lot of these problems. If we take a look at all our crime mapped out together in the last 30 days, you can see Bangor and 3500 South, where that blue box is active. That's where we've had a couple of the burglaries, auto thefts, and vehicle recoveries. We're continuing to concentrate on that. In the last 2 weeks, you can see on the east side, so on the right side of that box, we still have that red spot going on. So we know we still have activity going on, that's active. But if you look out on the right side of that box, where those vehicle burglaries from that party, you begin to see that break up. It's not as intense as it was. You don't see the red bullseye on it anymore, because we think that that was a very short one-night episode. We go up and look at that area just above 3500 in Bangor, the Rockwood area. What's been going on just inside of that one hotspot, we can begin to see that most of our problems are happening during the early afternoon hours. Sunday, Friday tend to be the most active times right now. All right, let's talk about some significant events that have been going on inside the city in the last month. First, let's start off with the good news. Let's talk about Neighborhood Night Out. We've started the Neighborhood Night Out kickoff. We've got a number of programs, thank you, a number of programs in communities that came out on that one night, but it continues for us the whole month long. So just about every weekend until the end of the month, there are some communities having their neighborhood night out against crime. The city has been recognized for, I believe, about 20 years. We've received an award for the amount of participation that we have from our citizens supporting Neighborhood Night Out, which is positive. It means people are paying attention, people want to be involved, people want to fight crime, and are unifying to do it. Something else that we're talking about. I'm sure everybody has heard about this aggravated assault that happened over at the Valley Fair Mall. There was an employee in the food court area that was giving out samples. 3 youths come by and they start an interaction with him. It escalates into a verbal argument, and then a fight breaks out. Now, what happened was the employee who's resisting with these 3 people, he starts winning the fight. And one of the suspects pulls out a small knife and stabs him. Stabs him in the back 3 times. The 3 suspects take off. We have uniformed officers who work part-time at the mall, along with mall security. They quickly respond. They're able to immediately detain one suspect and still track the other 2 suspects as they leave the mall, go across the street toward the apartment complex. They're able to detain them. All 3 suspects, within about 10 minutes or so of this event, are in custody. Now, we did receive a inquiry from our media about activity at the mall. And, people here, well, you've had the stabbing at the mall. You've had, an assault with a firearm at the mall. You've had these other events that have happened at the mall. And the question was, is our mall safe? So we went back and we took a look at what's been going on at the mall and looked at the last 12 months. That's what this request from the media has been. And what we found is we've had 14 assaults, 1 domestic. We've had 1 aggravated assault with a knife. We've had 1 aggravated assault with a firearm, and then 1 aggravated assault with a weapon, another weapon. I believe it was a set of brass knuckles. All in total, 19 events there. And the question is, how excessive is that? Well, if you break it down and you look at 19 events over a year, a little over 1 in a month was, what we came to. We're looking at that and saying, is that prolific? I mean, certainly, we're concerned about it. We're working with the mall. We're working with the security personnel and the tenants. Of those 19 events, only 6 of those events happened within the mall itself. Most of those being the assaults and domestic. The more serious stuff was happening out on the parking lot once they left the building. Many of the assaults were youth related. The one thing you have to recognize with a retail center, this is a community congregation point. A lot of people come there. It's our only retail center, our mall type environment. And people tend, with their kids, they bring them to the mall, they drop them off, say, I'll see you in 5 hours. And they hang out, they want to socialize with their friends. And then every now and then what happens is you get this argument going, somebody doesn't like somebody says something they don't like, somebody looks at somebody funny and a fight breaks out. And it's quickly dispersed and pushed away. So do I think that we have a prolific problem at our mall? Is our mall unsafe? No, I don't think that. But I do believe we have need to work with the tenants and work with the community and work with the security people to continue to promote public safety at our mall. As I said, the mall actually employs off-duty police officers in uniform that patrol through that mall and on the property. They have their own private security force on that property. They have a code of conduct on the property where the tenants are supposed to, when they see problems, quickly notify security so that either the officers or security members can come and break up those problems and move them along. If you look at malls, you can really see these kinds of problems. It might not be as concentrated or as high as in numbers in other communities, but they have similar types of behaviors. They have fights. They have these assaults or even robberies that occur. Just simply because they are what they are. They are the social gathering point. When I was a commander in Maryland with the police department, I had 2 major malls in my district had the same kind of problems. And what we did is we partnered with the mall and we partnered with the tenants and we also partnered with the community. And we were able to put a code of conduct in and a sense of responsibility amongst parents to ensure and protect their children, to be with those kids. Not let your kids just wander about the malls freely because things happen. I think those are the same strategies that we're now talking about here. I found a lot of success out east with them, and I think they would be equally as effective here. Let's talk about the next thing. The Kings Point over at the park, just the other night. Homicide, 14-year-old male. 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have learned now, what started out, it came to us as, a shooting occurred. We get a call from actually the hospital because when the shooting happened, the 14-year-old was in a vehicle. The occupants of the vehicle drove straight to our local hospital center, and that's where we're first notified about it. What we have been doing since that point, through interviewing the individuals in the car and also interviewing people in the neighborhood and canvassing the neighborhood, we were able to quickly identify the suspects that were responsible. And as of yesterday, we had 3 of 4 suspects in custody. And as of today, we went out and locked up the final suspect, who was in fact the shooter. So, what we have learned, the question has been asked, is it gang related? Was it gang involved? And we do have indication that it was gang related. That we had a group affiliating with one gang out of Salt Lake City, and another group here in Kings Point with another, with a different or rival gang. They came together, words were spoken, it started to escalate, and shots were fired. Unfortunately, for our 14-year-old victim, he was struck by a round in the side of his head, and about 6 hours later succumbed to his injury. I'm going to jump over the crime suppression detail. I'm going to talk about that one in a minute. And I'm going to jump down to last night. Last night we again had another shooting. It was over in the east side of the city, 4100 south, about 1300 west. What was reported to us was the gentleman was in his car with another person. Car pulls up next to him. Words are exchanged. Argument breaks out. Shots fired. Operator of the vehicle catches a grazing wound in the back of the shoulder. He swaps out positions with the other person in the car. He's driven to the hospital. And the suspects involved drive away. Well, that was the original story. We have come to learn that there was some other criminal activity afoot that brought them down there, in the drug trade, and we're continuing to investigate that and moving forward with it. Now let's bounce back up to that countywide crime suppression operation. Last week, we did a 3-day operation with a multitude of jurisdictions. UPD, South Salt Lake, UTA, UHP were all involved for 3 days out in the evenings, focusing on stolen vehicles, wanted fugitives. And what you can see there is in that 3-day period, what these officers were able to accomplish that were out there. In 3 days, 36 felony arrests, 18 misdemeanor arrests, $65,000 in recovered stolen properties, 6 firearms seized, and then drugs. We seized 115 grams of methamphetamine, 75 grams of marijuana, 10 grams of heroin, and 8 grams of cocaine. We do these details about every other to every third month, where all the departments come together and we go out cooperatively and we look at these crimes that are crossing borders and work to try to identify who are our players and quickly get to them and get them off the street. Now, I've heard my phone buzz a couple times, so I want to jump over here real fast and let's see what questions are coming in. Okay. James asked, what can be done to clean up the drug house in his neighborhood? Well, James, if you either report into us confidentially or contact us through email directly and let us know, what is the address of the home that you're concerned about? What are the activities associated with it? If you see anything, any patterns are trending, let us know, and I will pass that along to our narcotics investigators, and we'll see what we can do to get that interdiction done. I have another question from Mike about what is being done about all the panhandlers in the city, and is that a crime? And he was wondering because they're everywhere. Absolutely yes. We have seen an increase in panhandling related incidents and an increase in transients over the last couple years. And we have a task force within the city that actually meets every Thursday to discuss these issues. The city has passed an ordinance that places a level of restriction on soliciting activities, not just for the person soliciting, but even for the drivers on the roadway who are donating. So you can't be engaged in that transaction. The roadways involve Redwood Road, 3500 South, 5600 West, 27 West. And in those intersections, you have to be out of the right-of-way completely. So the right-of-way 10 feet back. We are now working with our officers. We've trained all of our officers. Our community response unit is actively working with this. And our day shift personnel on both the midweek and weekend shifts have been tasked with doing consistent and sustained enforcement, to be making contact with both the solicitors and the vehicle operators that are giving these donations, to educate them, number one, and then number two, to take the enforcement action on either side. We know the reason that these people are here and doing this is simply because they're getting rewarded for it. People are giving donations. And what we want to steer are those donations toward a legitimate charity. You know, many times it's tax deductible, which is positive for the person that wants to make that donation. But what we can assure is when those donations are made to these charitable organizations, that those monies are going to treatment programs. It's not going somewhere that's facilitating maybe a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or some other, form of criminal behavior. Because we know that we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. But what we want to do is we want to be as compassionate as possible through our enforcement efforts to direct people, one, away from the behaviors that are contributing to it and bringing it here, and then number two, to connect people who need help with service providers that can give them assistance, that hopefully can break a cycle of addiction, can hopefully educate and prepare people for employment skills, and get them back on their feet to some sort of transitional housing, and then move forward. Not every one of our transients want that. And the reason I call them transients is simply because we know they move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We have noticed since the whole debate about the homeless shelters, we have seen since then, since the decision was made to move some of the shelters away from the center of Salt Lake City and move it to the outskirts, we've actually seen some increases in our transient population moving toward West Valley City. And I'm sure if you talk to Salt Lake City, they're probably going to have the same findings. We're also dealing with this in the Valley Police Association, which is the Association of Salt Lake County Police Chiefs, and discussing how we can approach this in a unified manner, because it is less effective when only West Valley goes out and deals with the problem, and we do enforcement, and we drive those individuals out of our city to, let's say, South Salt Lake, or down to Taylorsville, or back up into Salt Lake City. And what happens is then Salt Lake City or Taylorsville or whomever, they bring enforcement and push them back. And all we are doing is we start to play that little game of whack-a-mole. We're just moving people around, and we're not really effectively dealing with the problem. So by trying to work together collectively across the county with the police departments, being consistent and uniformed in our enforcement and direction and support, that we can reduce this problem and make the entire area less attractive to this kind of behavior. Stacy asks, what's the average response time to a non-emergency call in West Valley? Stacy, that's an interesting question. The average response times, I can tell you, are priority ones and our priority twos, which means a priority one means it's in progress or suspect still at scene or there's still an immediate threat. That's our highest priority call. We're about 5.5 minutes there on average that we can put an officer on scene. Our priority twos, which means it's just occurred, suspect may be on scene, we can put an officer on scene on average anywhere between 5 minutes 45 seconds to 6 minutes. Now, when we start getting up into the priority 3 and higher, and it goes all the way up to 9, some of our non-emergency calls can take hours to get to. And simply because with the volume of priority 1 and priority 2 calls, that's where the focus goes. And with a priority 1 or a priority 2 call, the one thing people have to understand is that's when we're dispatching at least 2 officers. So you send the primary officer and a backup officer to deal with the situation. And now, if you've looked at those maps and you look across the city, we have 8 patrol beats in our city. We staff 1 officer in each one of those beats. So that means at any given moment we have 8 officers generally on duty. Now, there are some occasions where we actually double that simply because we have overlapping shifts. So we have officers that work on 10-hour days. So that means and our shifts are staffed on an 8-hour configuration. So there are times for 2 hours in the beginning of the shift and the end of the shift where you have not just 8, you have 16. On our 12-hour shifts on the weekends, we have 4 hours coverage front and back where we're doubling up coverage. And then we also have traffic units, community response units that are out there in the field. So when things get really busy, we can begin to pull some of these officers away and get to make sure we can maintain that response and service level to those emergency calls. But nonetheless, those lesser priority calls, those non-emergency calls, can be left hanging. The one thing that we do, and I've set a policy for and a practice to establish, and actually have a report that comes to me every morning that I review, is any call we cannot get to within 30 minutes, we make a phone call to that complainant. And we explain to that complainant, we can't get there immediately and why. We want to make sure, are things still stable, is everything still safe, or has something changed that requires us now to immediately respond and change our priorities. So we're constantly assessing for that. Also remember that we have a dispatch center that we subscribe to, the Valley Communication Center. Some of our calls, some of our non-emergency calls don't even get dispatched to us for an hour because of the volume of business that's going on out in the field and officers aren't available. And dispatchers are queuing those calls back, those non-emergency calls. So it can be an hour or 2 before the police department's even made aware that there's a call holding somewhere. To combat that, we have access to what they call the computer dispatch system. So our officers in the car and our supervisors in the car, they can look and see what is on the screen. So they can see if something is holding. So if something has come in and a supervisor sees something, and they have the luxury and the authority to say to dispatch, go ahead and dispatch that call, get somebody out there. But we want those phone calls made. We want our public to understand. We want to get to them as quickly as we can. Sometimes we just can't do it in a prompt manner. And sometimes we ask for that understanding of, please, we need to get to those emergency calls first. It doesn't make your problem any less significant, but we want to make sure that people are safe, in how we're just, pushing our resources. All right, Cher is asked about the police at the mall. He wants to know how many we have on duty there. It ranges. We have officers who are at the mall. We also have officers that are at the movies that work independently there, and they work collectively. So if there's a problem in the mall and there's somebody in the movie, an officer in the movie theater, they will come out and support that. We typically have 2 or 3 officers that are working inside of that mall. Nathan asked, how's the city's police shortage in our city? Well, I'll interpret that to be, how's our hiring going? We up until last night, when the city council voted on our budget adoption, we were authorized for 208 police officers. After the vote, we were authorized for 214. The council actually voted to increase the budget this year to the police department and support funding for 6 new police officers and also 5 new civilian service personnel that can supplement our patrol force, which is going to be positive. The bad side of that is we got to hire them. We got to train them. We currently have 6 vacancies. Even this morning, I was interviewing candidates, certified police officers that wanted to come to our organization. So we are making an offers there. In the last, I can say I've been here almost 4 years now. Out of the 200 officers, I've hired more than half of them. There's been a lot of turnover inside of the police department, and things moving forward. So it's been a difficult road to do all that hiring, and then one of the things that we almost fall, I don't want to use the word victim to, is the Post Academy. So the Utah Police Academy only runs so many sessions, and we're only given so many slots in those sessions because everybody needs to train police officers. So it's not just how fast can we hire them, it's also how fast can we train them. So it's 13 weeks in the police academy. Once they come out of the police academy, it's anywhere between 4, and that's quick, to 6 months, where that trainee is now riding with an experienced field training officer. So it takes us nearly a year when a vacancy occurs to get that vacancy filled, somebody hired, somebody trained, and then somebody out on independent patrol. And that's been one of the real struggles for our agency. Last year, there were points where literally we were 28 officers down, meaning vacancies, and we still had another 30 that were either in the police academy or out on field training. 40% of our police department was missing because of vacancies and training. So it was the remaining 60%, so almost half of the police department was carrying the load. And we were moving things around, holding vacancies in specialized positions, bringing as much as we could back to the patrol force because we knew the priority is when the 911 call rings, we got to put a police officer on that call as quickly as we can. We have to be able to maintain that basic level of service. And that's been a real challenge. But we are coming out the other side of it. We've made a good bit of progress, as I said, from going from that many down to a point now where we're 6, absolute vacancies, and now we'll add on the additional 6 that we were just authorized for. The good news is we are still getting good candidates. People still want to come to work for our organization. And what's kind of refreshing is when you hear these candidates come in and you talk to them and they say, one of my questions is, well, why do you want to come to West Valley? And all of them are saying, well, we like what's going on here. They've taken the time to read what we're about now, what we're doing, the progress that we're making, the direction the organization's going, and they want to become part of that. So we are getting good recruits. Casey asked about so many people texting and driving on Mountain View Corridor. Who should we call when we see reckless drivers or distracted drivers? My advice there is when you see something like that, when you see a public safety threat, you call 911. It will connect you with the right jurisdiction, and if it doesn't, we'll connect you to it. The reason I say that is because when you're on a cell phone, the towers, it depends on where the tower is. You could be in West Valley, but the tower might be up along where a magnet is or out in the county, and it can go to the county dispatch center first, just because that tower is where you connected. But they quickly will transfer that call over to West Valley. Actually, they will start processing that call and transfer the information over. The one thing that we have told our staff is, I'm sure you've heard these conversations about this unified CAD system and the need to do it. How calls were getting lost and people were dying, all this panic. Realistically, that's not the reason for it. It wasn't because of the CAD systems. The CAD systems can talk to one another. We weren't having any problem with doing that. It might slow it down a fraction of a second, but we weren't having a problem doing that. Some of the arguments became, whose jurisdiction was it? No, that's not in our jurisdiction, send this department or whatever. Our practice and policy in West Valley is that if an emergency call comes in, we don't care where it is. If it comes to us, we will start a car that way. Because you, the citizen, when you need help, don't care what the patch says. You just want to know that help is on the way or help is now at the doorstep. And we'll figure out the administration issues if we're responding outside of our jurisdiction. It's happened. We've gone into Taylorsville, into Magna. We do it. We do it routinely. Same thing with UPD. UPD will come and back us up on calls. We all work together. There's not enough of us out there that we can handle all the problems by ourselves. That's the one nice thing about law enforcement here, not only in Salt Lake County, but in Utah. There's a great effort to work together and share our resources. Taryn raises a question about what causes the high turnover in the department and what are we doing to combat it? Well, that's a difficult question. One of the big things that happened to us was back in August of 2015, and the city actually offered an incentive for people to leave. So people took a buyout. I lost 22 police officers in one shot. I already had vacancies. So that was a big amplification to a problem. Another problem we had is we got out of line with our pay scales. And we started to see officers who were actually interested in jumping to other organizations. We had several leave. Went to the council, talked to the council about that. They recognized it. They voted for some tax raises to drive in some more revenue, bring additional monies to the police department so we could fund some additional raises to our officers. Another piece of it simply is the workload. When you look at our city, we're number 2 city in the state. We have almost 37,000 citizens. We're running about 110, 115,000 calls for service. Plus, when you talk about those priority 1 and priority 2s, where you're sending 2 cars for a call for service, we're running about 25,000 priority 1s, another 25,000 priority 2s. So that really amplifies how much our workload is. When you look at that, we're very busy with our staffing. Salt Lake City is not running that many more calls for service than we are. They're probably within 20% of what we're running. Salt Lake City has nearly 500 police officers. And we're running with 200. And we're running short. And that's a lot of stress and a lot of workload on the frontline staff. People are getting tired. So they left the organization because of that. Finally, one of the other reasons is me. I came into the organization, we had a few problems. We had a few people who saw the writing on the wall and left. And we had a few other people that, frankly, I had to invite to leave. And I hope that you'll understand and support that. But I think everybody wants the best and most qualified and professional police officer they can have when their need is. And there were a few people that just weren't delivering that. So I created some of that problem. But we've been hiring since then, and as I say, I think the department's come a long, long way. I think one of the things that you can take pride in the fact that your police department is the only nationally accredited police department in the state of Utah. Only 5% of police departments rise to that level of accreditation because of how strenuous and difficult it is. Well, thank you. And what I always tell people is about this accreditation. They say, what's this accreditation mean? I said, well, let me ask you a question. You're sick, you need heart surgery, or you have a brain tumor, you have brain surgery, right? Which hospital are you going to go to? You're going to go to the one that's nationally accredited or the one that's not? You're going to want to go to the doctor who has all the board certifications or the one that doesn't? That's why we went for accreditation. Professionalism, it makes sure that we stay abreast with the latest developments in law enforcement. It keeps us up to date on our policies and our practices, and it continually monitors us to assure that our practices do meet what our policies and what their principles say and their standards say we have to do. It's just not that we get accreditation once and then we can celebrate and never have to do it again. This is something every 4 years we have to do. Every year we have to maintain our standards, and we have to demonstrate and supply proof of our application of those policies and standards in our operations. And then at the end of those 4 years, an independent body comes inside of our police department and inspects us. It is not an easy process. It took us 3.5 years to get it done. So, all right, other questions anybody might have? Yes, sir.
So I guess just a question I have mostly for you, I guess, is with all the progress that's been made, all the changes, that, you know, the culture shift since you've come in, and then the work towards this big goal of this certification, I guess, is there now another goal that you have either personally or for the department as far as any other big major changes or any plans, I guess?
Yeah, I need to lose 40 pounds. It's another joke. Actually, I do need to lose 40 pounds. Now you're laughing at me. The accreditation we achieved was Tier 1. So it was our first tier of accreditation. We've already enrolled in the advanced accreditation process, which doubles the number of standards that we have to apply. So it was almost 200 standards for the first tier of accreditation. It's 400 for the next tier. So if you're not reaching forward, you're falling backward, is the way I feel about it. So we will continue to move our organization forward.
How many tiers are there in that accreditation?
Two. So there's your initial accreditation and there's advanced accreditation. Other questions? Yes?
I often hear from folks, you live in West Valley, ooh, the crime is worse there. Mm-hmm. I don't want to believe it. I don't believe that.
Well, you don't have to because it's not true.
Exactly. So I just wanted you to publicly address that.
Okay.
All those negative
sayings. I mean, for those people that really want to understand and talk about what's going on in West Valley, you know, one of the things you can do is you can go online, you can go to the website of the FBI, to the Uniform Crime Reports, and you can look at crime statistics. Or you can go to the Department of Public Safety for Utah, to the Bureau of Criminal Information, BCI, and you can pull up the crime statistics and see where we rank. Now, the highest crime rate, Salt Lake City, largest city. Okay, understandable. We're the second largest city, so you would think, oh, well, then we're number 2. We are not. We're usually number 3, 4, or 5. I'm not going to say we don't have crime. But one of the things I can tell you, having worked in other jurisdictions, police chief in Kentucky, police commander in Maryland, outside of the city of Baltimore, we don't have that much crime. It's pretty safe here. Things could be a lot worse. But those are the facts. Now, a lot of times I hear people say the exact same thing. You're riddled with gangs. You're riddled with crime. A lot of times, those people are talking, from Moab, St. George, Payson, wherever that is. But they really don't understand what's going on here. But in order to make themselves feel better, they want to talk about how bad things are over there. It's not nearly as bad as people think. Frankly, the neighborhood I live in, I put it up just against any neighborhood anywhere else. Nice home, walking paths, waterways. It's in West Valley City. It's people just don't understand. They don't want to take the time to understand the truth. And it's probably a battle many times. As much as we try to fight it, we won't convince some people. But we'll keep working. The one thing I can tell you is this community supports the police department. We support the community, and we are working together to make the community better. Not just aesthetically better, but lower crime. Educate our community. That's why we're here. We're educating our community about what's going on, what you can do about it, how you can protect yourself. Because when you have knowledge of what's going on and how you can protect yourself, and you start looking out for your neighbors and they look out for you, those are informed communities. Those are organized communities. Informed and organized communities are stronger communities. Stronger communities have lower crime. Do we have challenges? Yes, but we are making progress. I think somebody from Payson is sending me a message.
They don't have cell phones.
Okay, can you get grants? Shayla asked if we can get grants because of our accreditation and help budget more officers. We get a number of grants that we apply to crime fighting programs. We do have a grant right now. I think we're in the last year of it, where we actually 2 years ago expanded the police department by 10 officers. And we used a federal grant to do that, to pay that figure. So yes, we do leverage grants whenever we can. Some of the grants that we leverage cannot be used for personnel expenses. They can only be used for crime fighting or equipment or whatever that is. But we are constantly out there searching for and working with companies or our federal partners for added funding. Yes, ma'am?
How many canines do we have in the city?
Right now we have 5. And I actually just signed a request to purchase a new bloodhound, because the bloodhound that we have is getting ready to retire. Yes, sir.
If y'all don't mind, I have a brief opening statement.
Uh-oh.
First, thank you for inviting us, the community, to meet with West Valley City Police Department and the Chief. I have lived in West Valley for 4 years. I was born and raised in Utah. I've been here my whole life. In the recent years, I have met the police chief of Boston during the time of the infamous Boston Marathon tragedy. I also witnessed the world-class diligence of law enforcement when I was in the same building and the same room as the President of the United States. In the last year, the groups of people who have helped me the most, next to my family, have been police. Also, the horrific events in Dallas, Texas in 2016 showed me that we need great people who wear the badge and uniform now more than ever. When I was younger, I mean like way younger, I did not trust police. Now I do. I have forgiven, and only as a team can we succeed. I want to give special thanks to Officer Smith, Bragshaw, and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Officer Babcock, and the most influential officer in my life, Officer Lopez of Unified Police Department. I know that we could talk for days about our city, Chief Russo. For the sake of time, the one emerging issue that concerns me most right now is drones. It is beyond difficult for civilians to know who, where, how, and definitely why someone is flying a drone in their backyard. What can we legally do about our neighbors' dumb behavior and their stupid drone invading our privacy in our backyard?
Okay. That's I like the beginning of it. Let's talk about these drones. Yeah, we are seeing an increase with drones. Drones that are flying through neighbors' properties. We've had occasions where we've actually had drones that have looked in windows, been using that way, in a voyeuristic violation. You can call the police department. A drone has to be registered. And the one thing here that's unique about drones is we're on a flight path going into Salt Lake Airport. And there's very tight restrictions with the FAA to put anything into the air. And drones are covered by that. So, if there is an annoyance, there is a problem, it is creating a disturbance, please call us. And especially if you know who is flying it, so we can make contact with them. Many times by the time we get out there, because these drones have such a limited flight time, I mean, they're up and within 10 or 20 minutes, that's all the power they have, and they got to come back down. Some people have them get caught in their trees. And, the one, and it was a legitimate question. What do you do? What happens if somebody's drone comes into your backyard and you have a fenced-in backyard? My advice then was, my advice there is a mean dog. You're going to take care of that drone problem. But yeah, but the real answer there is, if it's creating an annoyance, give us a call and get an officer out there and let us look into what's going on. Yes, sir.
Some of those drones, though, are not not really, they don't really fit the mold for which the FAA can really tie into, that are really the small drones. I mean, they're about the size of your hand. And they really don't have the capabilities to climb very high, but they can still carry a
camera. Yes.
How do we do with those things?
If it's coming into your property area, I don't think that you have a problem with calling us. So if it's flying, if it's flying at the level of your house, the level of your windows, I think you have a legitimate concern to call us out there, and I think we can deal with it.
Well, I think one of the things if you're having that happening out in the country, you shoot it down with a shotgun.
Yeah, well, apparently they're doing that at military bases now.
Yes, they are.
I kind of want to be there and watch one of those happen. Because they got really big guns. Like playing skeet. Yes, ma'am.
On the 3-day cooperative,
Yes.
how much of that landed in West Valley, I'm curious?
About 20% of the total arrests were made inside of West Valley. But we were all over the county working together.
That's a sizable amount. That's a sizable amount.
Yeah. The one thing, our officers are really good at tracking down these criminals or suspicious vehicles, these stolen vehicles. We're not afraid of stopping them if they run from us. We don't like pursuits, but we'll do it. Because I don't think the answer is just let the bad guy run away and throw your hands up and do nothing. It empowers the bad guy. Pursuits are dangerous. I recognize that. We have a lot of training and policies around those. But we use strategies and practice strategies actually to try to prevent pursuits. Blocking in, using the tire spikes and things like that. And we're very effective at disabling cars before a chase actually has to occur. The other thing about our pursuits, we do terminate them. Our officers will terminate them when the risk factors exceed the reward for catching somebody. We're not looking to put our public at undue risk. But we do recognize what we do at times is dangerous. So, any other question? Yes, ma'am.
On those accidents they're showing, is there one particular, like the moving violations, are they like texting and talking and phone
No,
things?
no.
They're just airheaded things that we tend to do.
Most of our accidents are property damage only accidents. Minor property damage. The most compelling reason, backing. People back up into things. But a lot of them on the roadways or signals, people that try to get through a yellow light and miss. People that try to make a turn and are going too quick. So speed can be is a significant factor. Those are the things that we really want to concentrate on. We want to concentrate on those behaviors that can realistically reduce the accidents we see in our city. Okay, we've been going at this for about an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm running out of things to talk about. But one thing I will tell you when we talk about our police department, yes, I've been the leader of it for 4 years. Yes, we've made a lot of progress. But the one thing I will always remind you, it is the men and women who put this uniform on every day, who go out and answer those 911 calls, who are delivering the service. They are making the changes happen. They are the ones that are getting it done, and I couldn't be more proud of them. And I think you should be too. So with that, I want to say goodbye, and hopefully I'll see you next month. Thank you.